Okay, let's talk about refactoring as it relates to unit testing. When you're doing test-driven development, also known as TDD, the last thing you try to do in your process is to refactor your code for clarity and maintainability. A truly great thing about writing your code with unit tests and trying to maintain a relatively high level of code coverage is that these practices make it easy to refactor your code. If you have good tests for your code, you can refactor without fear because you have your test suite there to tell you if stuff is working or not working. Refactor your code, run the tests. If the tests pass, you're good. If the tests fail, well then you'll either need to fix the code or just roll back your changes. One thing I don't love about the code right now is that the initialization logic is a little repetitive. Basically, all these places in the arrange code where I say var system under test equals new calculator. In a simple demo app like this one, having this duplicated initialization logic isn't that big a deal. But when you get into more complicated coding and testing scenarios, this initialization code can become a real mess. What I like to do is to introduce a property in my test class for the system under test, and then centralize the initialization of the system under test. Let's do that right now. The first thing I'll do is to come up to the top of my test fixture class and create a nullable member variable. The type will be the same type as the system under test, and I'll name the variable _system under test. Next, I'll wrap that member variable in a property. This property will only have a getter, and the return type will not be nullable. Inside of the get, I'll look at the value of the system under test member variable. If it's null, I'll create a new instance of the system under test class. And usually I'll add an assert that the member variable is no longer null. This just helps me to double check that I'm doing the initialization properly. And then finally, I'll return the value of _system under test through the property. This property now gives me a single place to put my initialization logic and a single consistent way to reference the system under test from within all of my tests. Consistency is very helpful for maintainable code and tests. Since each test is run with a new instance of the test fixture class, the system under test member variable always gets wiped out. This means that each test execution is guaranteed to have a fresh instance of the calculator class. Like I said before, this probably is overkill for a simple demo like this, but in real-life coding situations, this helps a lot. Okay, now I'll go through the test code and change the code to reference the property rather than having each test method new up its own instance of the calculator class. Remove the local var system under test and change the act to reference the property. So like I said before, for our demo app, this probably isn't a game changer. I mean, it's a demo app and it's simple. In real actual production code, especially where the initialization of your system under test might get complicated, well, making this change has centralized the initialization of our system under test. And it's also got a code quality / coding standards thing going for it too, because now we have a standardized way of accessing the system under test in our test code. And if you're working with a team of coders, this is definitely something you might want to try because it keeps things readable and standardized. And now I'll go make the changes in the rest of the code through the magic of video editing. Okay, I'm done with those refactorings, and now let's run the tests to make sure everything still works. Run the tests all pass, and then we'll go commit these changes to Git. And at this point, we're done with this first series of xUnit unit testing demos. So I'll do some other tests on unit testing topics soon, but hopefully these calculator unit testing demos get you going with writing code with unit tests. And if you have questions or thoughts or comments or things you want to see, send me an email, info@benday.com, or write a comment into this video. Anyway, if you liked this video, please consider clicking like and subscribe. And yeah, thanks for watching.